Practice makes perfect, we've been told, and that you can be whoever you choose to become. And if at first you don't succeed, try again. And if you're like me, you've heard those words so many times in your life, they've almost become cliche. But I'm here to use those to reflect with you and really look into this deeper and ask ourselves if this is true, how can we tap into this theory and use it to our advantage? Now, there are a handful of people who call themselves the behaviorists who believe in these words that I've just quoted, and one of them is John Watson. He makes some very bold claims that people can be whoever they choose to be. And he goes ahead to say that if you give him a handful of men who are fully developed without any mental impairment, such as learning disabilities or any other handicaps, he can turn them into whatever he chooses for them to become. Engineers, doctors, psychiatrists, whatever high functioning job that he chooses, or actually turn them into thieves or beggars, simply by exposing them to certain stimuli or environments, or actually what he calls conditioning. And these are the three forms of learning that he thinks leads to you achieving whatever you choose to achieve. My name is Aso, and you are very warmly welcome to Clear Minds and Self Healing. I appreciate my returning subscribers, and I want to thank you for all the motivation that you give me week after week. And I encourage you, if you're watching for the first time, to subscribe and join me on this channel. I produce content weekly, which is really meant to create an awareness for learning and growth. And today I want to use this theory of behaviorism for our reflection so that we can really tap into the fact that behavior is within our reach to influence. And if that is true, then we can start to position ourselves in those areas where we want to achieve and really reap the fruits of what these theories are saying. Now, this was founded by Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov, who worked with dogs and really by mistake realized that their behavior could be conditioned and therefore decided to implement that into human psychology. So what happened was the dogs would salivate at the sight of food. And then he moved on to introduce food after ringing a bell. And after doing that repeatedly, the dogs would salivate just from the sound of the bell without any food presented. And also, as the experiment went on, the dogs would salivate at the sight of the lab technicians who brought the food into the room, even when the dogs saw the technicians without food, because they had learned to associate food with the ringing of the bell and to associate the technicians as coming into the room with the food after the bells had been rung. Now, the way these theories work with human psychology is in three ways. And according to Pavlov and John Watson, behavior is learned by observation or interaction in our environments. So as you go about your business in the environment, it teaches you either positively or negatively just by the way the environment is structured, whether it's inclusive, whether it's stimulating, whether it's structured in a way that promotes certain aspects or characteristics. You find that you function in the structure of that environment. Children explore the environments that we present to them. Some parents want quiet and clean and silent, and some want stimulation and exploration. Ultimately, a child lives what they learn. Now, how can we make this theory practical in our lives? Let's take a look at the three methods that behavior is acquired according to these theories. The first one is by interacting with your environment. So what they are saying is that we learn from our daily interaction with your environment, and therefore if your environment is inclusive, if it's stimulating, and if it's rich enough to present those skills and characteristics that you need, you will reap those benefits just by interaction with that environment. What this means is that knowledge is cultural, that learning and behavior can sometimes be cultural. Let's look at polygamy, for example. If you grow up in environments where polygamy is accepted, is the norm, you will find yourself doing those things without reflection on any other way, because this is what you've learned. This is what you're surrounded by in that environment. And for those who are not exposed to such habits and behavior, it becomes strange. They perceive it as odd or shocking. So is language. A child who grows up in Japan will speak Japanese without any formal education setting, just by repeated exposure within their home and social environments where that language is spoken and promoted. And the same goes for any child in any culture. Children are influenced by their environments, by the parenting, the attachments, the stimulation, the trust, and everything that they experience as they grow up. The second way that you learn is by conditioning. And what this means is just like the experiment with the dog, that you have to repeatedly position yourself, stimulate yourself, introduce certain behaviors and certain characteristics side by side, so much so that people become conditioned to respect, obey, and enhance those things in their lives without even thinking about them. Now, let's look at the church, for example. The hell and the heaven teachings of the church. If you grow up in church, you automatically understand that these are the expected values. You know that if you behave in this way, you will be going to the kingdom of God. And if you behave in this way, you will go to hell. And therefore, by the preachings and listenings and continuous exposure to those teachings, you start to manifest them in your life. You start to feel the joy and the glory when you are doing those, and you feel the guilt and the psychologically really limiting and extraordinarily scary thoughts if you go contrary to those preachings. The same goes with the education system, which, according to these psychologists, has been developed around their discovery. The reward and punishment issues in school, where if you pass your exams, you go to the next class and to the next class and you get to graduation. So it sets that stimulating environment, that psychological and that reward rich for the children who want to go, who don't want to stay in the class, who actually have those psychological torture for failing the exams, for not being good enough, for not having that excellent rewarding behaviors that enable them to go to the next class and the next class and the next class, and therefore work hard to achieve those goals. And even shops and companies have started enhancing their own workers using these psychological facts. The reward system, the Argos, the Tesco, the cards which give you a reduction for coming consistently into their shops, promotions at work, demotions, or being fired. This sets standard in those institutions that you have to follow. Otherwise, everyone will sleep at work and turn up late. Otherwise, nobody will give in their best in those circumstances. So a lot of people, a lot of institutions and employers are using these behaviorist theories in their job places to work with people. Look at our legal systems, the law around everything in your society, the driving code, stop at the light, hazard perception, everything that conditions you as a driver to act in certain ways because of the benefits of safety that it presents to that society. And therefore, you know that if you break the law, these are going to be the consequences. And if you live by the law, this will be the positives, not just for yourself, but for the society as a whole. And that's what conditioning behavior means, how we learn it by conditioning. You know it repeatedly. You have to work hard for your driving lesson, and you only pass it when they know that you have learned and understood those things. And as you start to drive, it becomes second nature. You come up to the roundabout, you stop, and you watch the right direction and you go. The light turns red, you stop. It turns green, you go. And that is how behavior is conditioned. Now, if we look at the other one that is a stimuli, it also works with the reward system. And therefore, you're conditioned, you're stimulated, or you're interacting in your environment as the individual. And whatever that environment presents becomes what you inherit, which is why your relationships are being encouraged to be positive. And those are things that are within your reach to change. If you position yourself into those relationship mediums, whether it's professional or romantic or social, that are stimulating and positive for your growth, you will then be able to get that support and to learn from them and to happily copy from their own success stories. Now, I don't know about you, but this makes a lot of sense to me. As a parent, as a friend, as an employee, as a citizen of the world, we learn a lot from our environments without even realizing that this is how much influence it has on us. And if that can teach us the way it has taught us, whether it's by conditioning or by observation or by stimuli, it means that we can control those three characteristics. We can present our own stimuli, set your own goals, set your own rewards that will elevate you and motivate you to reach for them. And when you set those stimuli, introduce yourself to them repeatedly. That conditioning that will get you to become those things that you need to achieve those goals. And that environment that you've positioned yourself in needs to be a healthy one. It needs to be a happy one, emotionally stimulating one, so that you can have all the tools that you need to grow, to excel, to be happy, and to reach those goals that you have set for yourself. I don't know about you, but I suddenly believe that I can be the best. I can be anybody that I choose to become. And I suddenly believe that I will keep trying and trying and trying until I succeed. That I will happily condition myself and not let other people do it for me. And that I will help you to condition yourself by this message. And I implore you to share it and help other people on their journey. It sounds like a joke, but it works. These are tested and proven methods. And I'm happy that you're going on this journey with me. And I hope that you can share and motivate and empower other people to embark on their own self-discovery and self-growth journeys.